The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. There was a scholar of the law who stood up to test Jesus and said, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus said to him, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" He said in reply, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your being, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." He replied to him, "You have answered correctly. Do this, and you will live." But because he wished to justify himself, he said to Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man fell victim to robbers as he went down from Jerusalem to Jericho. They stripped and beat him and went off, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down that road, but when he saw him, he passed by on the opposite side. Likewise, a Levite came to the place, and when he saw him, he passed by on the opposite side. But a Samaritan traveler who came upon him was moved with compassion at the sight. He approached the victim, poured oil and wine over his wounds, and bandaged them. Then he lifted him up on his own animal, took him to an inn, and cared for him. The next day he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper with the instruction, 'Take care of him. If you spend more than what I have given you, I shall repay you on my way back.' Which of these 3, in your opinion, was neighbor to the robber's victim?" He answered, "The one who treated him with mercy." Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. The words of the gospel. There's a woman driving down a deserted desert road, and as she's going along, she passes by this elderly Navajo woman having just left the trading post, and she's holding her goods in a shopping bag and using a cane in the other hand. And so out of pity for her, this woman driving down the road pulls over and offers her a ride, and she gratefully accepts this ride. And as they're driving down the road, the woman driving noticed that the Navajo woman kept eyeing up her bottle of wine that she had in the floor. And so knowing this, she said to the Navajo woman, "Oh, it's a bottle of wine. I got it for my husband." And the Navajo woman said, looking at the bottle, "You got bottle of wine for husband. Good trade." That's okay. Give it a minute. Give it a minute. Sometimes we hear this adage from the Good Samaritan, and we hear that golden rule of treat others as you would have them treat you, and we transform it into treat others as they treat you. And that's not what we're called to. It's not a trade. It's not a trade like I love those who love me. I'm good to those who are good to me. It goes beyond that. This story of the Good Samaritan reminds me of 2 songs I learned early in my childhood. The one was from Mr. Rogers, "Won't You Be My Neighbor?" And the second one, I think it came from Sesame Street, "Who are the people in your neighborhood?" The people that you meet each day. The question comes about, who is my neighbor? Now, first of all, what's the motivation? First of all, he says these things to test Jesus. He's a scholar. And so he wants to test Jesus. And he says, "Who is my neighbor?" And it's a trick question, because the Greek word used in Luke's gospel is pleisitas. And pleisitas literally meant, who is the other one like me? So in other words, the idea of neighbor in the ancient world was someone who votes like I do, likes the things that I like, dresses the way I do, fits in my socioeconomic class, worships the God that I do. So for a Jew, it would be another Jew. It wouldn't be a Gentile. He's not my neighbor. It wouldn't be a Roman. He's not my neighbor. It would only be that. And so when he asked this question, he says, Lord, in order to justify himself, Lord, who then is my neighbor? Knowing very well who his neighbor is. And so what does Jesus make him say? A Samaritan. And the Samaritans were enemies of the Jews and vice versa because of what happened during the exile. So Jesus never answers his question. I don't know if you notice at the end of this passage, Jesus does not say, okay, who's the neighbor? He essentially asks the question, who are you a neighbor to? Now, to give some credit here, you know, the priest walks by on the other side of the road, the Levite walks by, and we could put them in a bad light. But that journey between Jerusalem and Jericho was perilous. You go from 900 feet above sea level to 300 feet below sea level. There's only a narrow little passage that everybody had to take. And if you can imagine in like the old westerns where they come around the pass, and there are the bandits waiting for them, that's what happened here. And it was a common practice that they would take someone and put them in the middle of the road as though they had been victimized. And when a Good Samaritan comes over to help, then they rob him. That was classic. So the Levite and the priest probably were just being prudent. They didn't want to fall for this trick if it was a trick. Which means that this Samaritan went above and beyond. Maybe even put his own life in jeopardy. And so Jesus is not saying, who is your neighbor? He's saying, who are you a neighbor to? He puts it back on us. And what are we called to? Early in my priesthood, I was chaplain at Trinity High School in Camp Hill. And I was at Good Shepherd and Seven Sorrows. And I remember when the kids would go back from high school, they'd go home, there was this Vietnamese custodian. And he would go around scraping the gum off the floor. And he was so meticulous about it that he would clean the bathrooms there as though he were cleaning a palace, as though he were cleaning a kitchen or something. And he put time and energy into it, almost like it was a vocation, like he did it out of love. And I remember remarking to the students, you disrespect this man every day. And outwardly they thought, no, we say hello to him, we're nice to him and everything. Yeah, but then you throw your gum on the floor for him to pick up. Or you miss the trash can and you don't go back to put it in the wastebasket. And here this man is doing it out of love for people he doesn't even know. Now, I was eventually transferred from there, and I went to Lebanon. And my first parish there was St. Benedict the Abbot. And as I walk into the church, there is a giant mural of St. Benedict the Abbot that I could tell was recently done. And I asked the previous pastor, who did this mural? It's beautiful work. And he said, let me tell you this story. So during the Vietnam War, there were refugees that came over on this boat to get out of harm's way. And they were all in the bowels of this ship. And there was one man in the bow of the ship that was responsible for dishing out the soup, which really was kind of, just watered down chicken broth or what have you. And to the children and the pregnant women, he would give an extra ladle of soup. In fact, sometimes he would give his own portion away so that others might be able to live. And aside from being a hero to these people, he was also a brilliant artist. And he could not get a job in the United States. So what he did is he began painting murals for his church. And if you go to Holy Family Church in Harrisburg, you'll see his murals inside the walls of the church. That no one would hire him, so he did this. And so this pastor commissioned him to do this painting of St. Benedict the Abbot, which is still in Lebanon. And I thought, man, with such brilliance and generosity, where is this man? And he said, oh, he's the custodian at Trinity High School. So this brilliant artist and this heroic figure is scraping gum off the floor out of love. How does anyone do that? That this is like a superhuman kind of thing. And so in order to have that kind of love, one would have to realize this simple truth. That one day, God decided to create your soul. Have you ever thought about that? That just on one particular day, God thought that the world would be better with you in it. And so he decided, today I'm going to create this soul, and it will be unlike any before it ever. And it will be unlike any who will ever come after it. And I'm going to create this soul for a purpose that is so special and sacred that if they fulfill their purpose for which I've created them, the world will be changed forever. Which means if you look around right now, that person beside you is the only one of their kind in existence ever. And you might be saying, thank God. Or you might be saying, thank God, they're a great person and everything else. But the fact is, they are the only one of their kind. And if we can see that, then that carries with it a certain dignity. A couple years ago, they had this water bottle challenge, and everyone was doing it. I'm not a trendy guy, so I didn't do it at all. But today, I do have a water bottle challenge for you. Now, I did try to flip this yesterday. It didn't work out so well, so I'm not going to do it again. But you have this bottle of water, nice and clear, potable, and everything else, until it gets shaken up. And once it gets flipped or shaken up, you see all the impurities that it has in it. It has all kinds of dirt or soot or whatever else. Now, we might ask the question, oh, well, that water got dirty because you shook it up. No. The water was always dirty. It always had the sediment. We only realized the sediment when it got shaken up. And all of us have our sediment. And usually that sediment comes to the surface when someone shakes us up. Actually, some spouses are experts at this, okay? They're really good at shaking it up. And it's not that they put that into the bottle. It's not that they made it dirty, but they're bringing up stuff that was already there. And we look at this and we think, oh, I didn't know the water was dirty. Listen, we all have sediment. We all have it. It's different kinds, obtained at different times in our life. Archbishop Chaput of Philadelphia, said, this generation will be defined as the upgrade generation. Because we're always looking for the upgrade. We never settle. So even if I have a phone that's perfectly functioning, I need the next one that's coming out. I need to upgrade. And we do this with electronics. We do it with houses and cars. We do it with many objects in our life. And the danger is sometimes that bleeds over into our human relationships. And we will not invest in a person because there's always an upgrade. There's always someone better. And the irony is, I could say, well, this water's dirty. I'm going to throw it away and get a new bottle. I promise you, every bottle has sediment. Every one. And so, yeah, we could discard this, and we obtain another one and say, no, this one's clear. And then it gets shaken up and the sediment comes out. All of us have sediment. We all do. And those of us who are younger probably have a little less than those of us who have been around for a while. So we can't upgrade. There is no upgrade. Remember, God said one day, I am creating this soul. So that is the grade. There's no upgrade. There's no better than that. That's the best there is. So if we're not going to throw it away, we're going to take this water bottle challenge. And the challenge is this. I have two other options. I can let it settle. And if I let that sediment go back to the bottom, yeah, it'll look like clear water again, and everything will be fine until the next time it gets shaken up, and it'll come to the surface. And I can let it settle again, and it may take 3 days for that to settle, or 3 weeks, or 30 years, or a lifetime. That sounds like survival. It really does sound like not sediment, but settlement, if you know what I mean. So what's the other option? What if we try to purify the water? What if we try to help others to purify the water instead of simply discarding it or ignoring it, and that they have a possibility of a life they didn't think was possible before? And how do you do this? In organic chemistry, we distilled stuff. So when we needed to get product, we would distill it, we'd boil off the water would drip. This required high heat and a lot of patience. You just had to watch because it was drip by drip. But I promise you, if we take this challenge, it will be the best of challenges. The one that is most worthwhile to take. And what will happen is a love will emerge for people that we do not even know. Because we will begin to see beyond what they show up. This is the agape love that Jesus talks about. It's not a question of who is our neighbor. Obviously, everyone is. Because at one point in time, God told each of us, today I am creating you unlike any other. The question is, who are we a neighbor to? And this is not something that's unreachable. Moses says in the first reading, this is something that's written on your heart. It's not something that's up in the sky or something that you have to pursue. But it is a journey. And it does require patience. And it is the ultimate sacrifice. Now, we may get to a point where we say, no, I can't go backwards. Or no, I can't purify the water, it's too dirty. Or no, I can't help this person because we're beyond that stage. And realize that that is the voice of the evil one. And when you think those things, if you pray through the intercession of Mother Teresa of Calcutta, who's now a saint in the church, that you will hear her words, the words she said while she was here, and the ones that I echo now. A person can, at any moment, choose to live differently.